Well, what happened?
Because Dan was just driving and the tank was below a quarter. He wasn't even passing the filling station, he wasn't even filling up. And Alton happened to wake up and notice the gas tank. And he said, Dan, what in the hell's going on with you? Don't you know how to stop at a filling station? And did you know we finally found one? And then it was for miles and miles and miles before we ever saw another station. I mean, hundreds of miles before we ever found another station. And it was so cold in that car that our breath was freezing on the inside of on the back window. That's how cold it was. Alton and Dan was up in the front seat. Me and Nell was in the back seat. But we were covered up. We had blankets and all with us. But if we'd have given out of gas, we'd have froze to death out there on the highway. But it was really, really cold. Ice everywhere. I said, never no more.
Nana, what was your mom's name?
Jessie.
What's her mom's name? So your grandma?
Mary.
What was her last name?
Darling. I don't know my grandmother's last name. Now my daddy's mother was, she was a McLendon.
And your mom's last name was McDaniel.
So Darling, my grandmother, my mother's mother, she married a Darlie, but I don't know what her maiden name was.
So what was your mom's last name was Darley.
Darlie.
And then she married McDaniel, right?
Yeah.
So what about your dad's mom?
Grandmother was a McLendon. She married a McDaniel. My dad's mother was a McLendon. She married a McDaniel.
What was her name?
Alfie.
Alfie.
A-L-P-H-A. Alfie. You very seldom ever hear that name anymore.
How do you say it?
A-L-P-H-A. Alfie.
Huh.
It's a pretty name.
It is pretty.
But my grandmother McDaniel, she never wore a short dress. She always wore long dresses. Long sleeves. I never saw her with a short dress on. But she was so short, she was such a small lady. And she didn't wear panties during the summer, but she made her panties during the winter time. But when she wanted to pee, she'd put that dress out in the front and the back and spread her legs, and she'd just pee on the ground. I've seen her do that a many a time.
So that's when she was working outside?
Yeah, when she was working outside. Bless her heart, she was the sweetest old lady. But she was 87 when she passed away. But me and Alton and Luster Dadna, we were on our way to Monroe, Louisiana when my grandmother McDaniel passed away. And it was so cold, and we didn't turn around and go back for the funeral.
What were you doing in Monroe?
Luster Dadna's family lived in Monroe. Luster's mom and dad lived there. And Edna's, the Keens all lived there, all except Edna's twin brother. He was
In Baton Rouge?
no, he lived in Where's where you at?
Lafayette, New Orleans.
New Orleans. That's where
Does any of Edna's relatives live there now?
her sister-in-law still lives there.
What's her name?
Keene, K-E-E-N.
Whereabouts?
Melba Keene out in Metro. I don't know.
Melba King and Metairie.
On some highway.
Jefferson Highway? Veterans Highway?
She lives out in Metro.
Like in Veterans Highway?
No, it was King David Highway.
King David Highway.
King David Highway. I think it is. But she still lives there, and she didn't have any problem with that when that hurricane went through there. She didn't have any problem, but the rest of the people did. But Metro was spared some way. But then her daughter lived out in out on the edge of town out there, past.
Like in Laplace? Or Chalmette?
You go across that bridge out there to.
Like in Bay St. Louis in Mississippi?
No, it was back this way from New Orleans. And his sister lived up at Dillon Springs at one time, but she passed away. But that's where me and Edna went out there. I had got it. Me and Edna went out there, and I had high fever. But we went out to Ringamay's, and when I got out there, I had above 103 fever after I'd taken 2 Bayer aspirins. So I told Ringamay, I said, call your doctor, and I'll go see him. So they take me to the hospital, and they made x-rays and showed I had pneumonia in the center of my right lung. I didn't have a sign of a cold. But the doctor put me in the hospital out there, and I stayed in the hospital a week. And then we got out, when I got out of the hospital, me and Ed had taken off for Savannah.
You guys just stayed going, didn't you?
We got, and I'd let Edna drive, and a car would come and meet us, and she'd slow down. And I said, if I didn't stay under that steering wheel, we would never get to Savannah.
She drives slow?
So we stopped in some part of Florida there, spent the night. Pulled in there at 11:30 that night in a motel, and we spent the night. Got up the next morning, and I drove from there all the way into Savannah. But we didn't get into Savannah till 6 o'clock that afternoon. And Lester, he was worried to death about us. So I stayed with Ed and Lester that night, and then that was Sunday night. And Monday morning I called Dr. Rollins, and he said, come on in, I want to check you. So I went in and he checked me, and he said, you still got pneumonia. So he put me back in the hospital for another week. So I don't want to be without that Arcilio.
We'll get some tomorrow, Nana.
You take it.
Sometimes, yeah. And then when I get sick, I take a lot of the herbal supplements or tinctures, you know? Because I don't like taking Dayquil and all that.
I'll take that Zicam too, it's good.
I've never tried that.
I got some Zicam in there. If you feel like you're coming in with a cold, that Zicam is good. I like that throat spray that you spray your throat with. Have a little cough.
Yeah.
You can spray your throat with that Zicam and it'll stop it. How you like my hat?
I love it.
Me and Phyllis was in someplace one day, and I had that little white hat that I wore. And I said, well, I'm gonna have to get me another hat. Phyllis says, I want a hat too. So she bought her a cap, and I bought this one.
I like it. Looks cute.
But she bought her one of those look like a leopard. But I saw this one and I kind of liked it. But I tell you, I like those caps that I make.
Keep your ears warm.
Because it comes down over your ears. Does, what you call it, have one?
Basement? I think so.
Well, if you don't, Sippy Dad don't have one. He's supposed to have a bunch of them here.
He might have given them all away. I don't know.
He might have. But I know he had on an orange one, and then he had on that striped one.
Oh, he's got the orange one.
And there's a brown, there's a gray one over here. If not, when we get home, I'll give you one and you send it to him. Josh. You send him a couple of them for Christmas.
You give them to him.
Huh?
You give them to him. Or get Dad to give them to him. He's working for Dad, so get Dad to do it.
Well, you coming back over here for Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So,
I think he's actually going to Alabama for Christmas.
Oh, Josh is?
Yes, ma'am. I'll see if it's okay to give Phyllis's address to him, and he can stop by and see
Or
you.
you tell him to stop by.
All right.
'Cause I'll give him a couple of those hats that I make.
Well, that'll be good to...
Because he's working here and he needs it on his head. Even if he puts two on his head to keep that cold out of his ears. Sure. You know, I got two hats. I got the black one in here and I got the white one at Phyllis's that I bought when she first moved, when the first time I ever went to Akron, Ohio, when Phyllis and Larry was up there. Me and Alton went up there, and it was so cold, I slipped on the steps up there and hit my shin here, and I had the biggest hen egg out here on my leg when I slipped off on the steps.
Mm-hmm.
But me and Alton taking Phyllis up there when her and Larry got married to Akron. And then Alton, he caught the plane and flew back, and I stayed up there for a week, and then me and Ada taken off for Savannah, and I drove 500 miles out of the way to shun the mountains. I don't like the mountains.
Why?
Oh, they scared me to death. I've never been in the mountains before. And I didn't like to drive around those mountains. It scared me to death. So, AAA routed me around in South Carolina, back that way. And I don't remember exactly how I did go, but I traveled through, I don't know how many of the states I traveled in to keep from going through those mountains. Do you like the mountains?
I actually drove through the mountains for the first time the other day. And it was beautiful, but, you know, trying to go through windy roads is challenging, and the wind, and it's cold, but it's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, but I don't like it. First time we came up here, we traveled at 21, which was worse. My mother was scared to death. She held on to the side of the car what she could hold on to, and she was just shaking. And we went up to Mount Washington up in New Hampshire. Now it was 8 miles up on that mountain, and up there it stayed wet all the time, and the men, when they went up there, the only way they had of coming down was by helicopter or either a little clogged railroad. But they would get snowed in up there, and they'd have to stay there. But it stayed wet all the time. It was up right in the clouds. It was just amazing. I just can hardly believe that it was so much difference.
What highway was that?
Your dad taking us up there, me and Mama and Alton, and we were up there at James's, and he and I don't remember what Sylvia went with us or not, but I think little Jimmy did. But I think Sylvia was working. But little Jimmy, he would not. We went down to Russell's in Westfield, Massachusetts, and little Jimmy would not stay, and I had to drive back, and snow was piled up this high on each side of the road. And that little booger cried. He wasn't about 5 years old, if that. I want my daddy, I want my daddy. And we drove all the way back up to Rhode Island, up there to James's, to take that little booger back home. His dad, he cried all the way. He didn't like to be away from James. So, but I said if I had to do it again, he'd just have to cry because I wouldn't drive it. Alton couldn't drive. The doctor wouldn't let him drive.
Because of his heart?
On account of his heart. They just looked for him to go out any time. See, he had a pacemaker, and they had placed it in his heart. Anyway, his heart was so enlarged that they had to operate on him the second time and place it in the top section of his heart. And Dr. Stewart said that he didn't see how he was living. How he's living, God only knows. That was the 6th of January, and he passed away the 28th of April. And they put the pacemaker in the top section of his arm. But I had to charge that battery 1 hour every Thursday morning. I had a magnet that I put over that battery, over that pacemaker, and had this little box that thing fit, was plugged into, and I'd have to charge it 1 hour every Thursday. But they've come a long ways with the pacemaker since then. It's just amazing how they have come that far, you know, with the pacemakers. And his was one that electronic ovens would upset. So he had to not be around the microwave. So, but it don't bother me. It's just amazing, you know, how far they have come.